Many of you are not just with the pigs. You're not just feeding into it. You're gladly digesting what they eat. You're eating the same music. You're on the same social media platform, taking in the same junk. And you're doing it gladly. And if anybody comes to you and says, say, no, that's not where you're supposed to be, you rip your arm and you go right back to the trough. Because that's the life you're gladly living. You're that far away from home, just like I was. I would gladly eat the pig's food. I was at the lowest point of my life. Where are you at in yours? I was afraid this moment would come. The Lord has been telling me for so long that I need to share my true testimony. And I've been trying to avoid it because the honest reality is it's just that dark. But I guess who can continue to avoid it if the Lord is going to put a spotlight on you? I don't know if you'll believe this or not, but as it relates to me and my family, I am the black sheep. Some of you who have known me for a long time, maybe you do believe it. But I was the one who has a horrific past. It started because, y'all, to be honest with you, I just had a lack of reverence for my father. The whole ministry mantle, the expectations as the youngest son, I couldn't handle it. We went to church, as you know, all the time. You think you talk about God in your house? Try my daddy's house. It got to a point where it was hard for me to even bear his last name. So I said, I gotta go. There was a point in my life in the past that I said, I gotta go. I can't stay here and continue to be under this rule. Continue to be in my father's house. It got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. Except for the fact that, he would always talk about a will and how it's responsible to have a will, and that he was thinking about not just his children, but his children's children, because a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And he would say, even for you, as my youngest son, I have something laid up for you. I have favor and inheritance for you. And to be honest with you, when I heard that, it kept me at bay a little bit longer. Not because I wanted my father, but because I wanted the favor. And I knew that I was in a little bit of a predicament, because if I leave my father, I also leave my favor. Now don't judge me. Don't judge me, because if the truth be told, many of you today are like I was back then. You don't want the father, you just want the favor. You want the blessing, but you don't want the blesser. You want Christmas, but you really don't want Christ. And for many of you in the room, you want presents, but you do not want his presence. If the truth be told, you're just like I was back then. But I got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. Like I didn't want to continue trying to keep up with the charade. It's hard when you're trying to do it as a charade, when it's a game. So I had to figure out what I was going to do because I was in a catch-22. So I came up with a bright idea. It was a bright idea I came up with. I woke up one night out of my sleep and I said, I got it. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my father and see if he would be willing to go ahead and give me my favor up front. Why not? I wanted to see if I can get the favor and then go leave the father. I wonder if that sounds familiar to anyone. And so I did it. You wouldn't believe it, but I did it. I went to my dad and I said, Dad, let me hold something. Can I go ahead and get my favor now? Can you go ahead and give me my inheritance up front? Now you should have seen the look on my father's face. He had a grimace and a scowl on his face because he was so saddened by my request. He was distraught. He was even disgusted that I would ask for such a thing. Because you got to understand, we met with our financial advisor plenty times, and he said the inheritance does not get passed until the father passes. So for me to go ask my father for my inheritance up front was to wish he was dead. He knew that I was trying to get the favor without him. That I wanted to cancel him. And many of us are the same. We go to Christ for heaven while planning to be a heathen. He knew my heart. He heard my request, but he knew my heart. You know, I just wonder the look on God's face when we make our request. I wonder the scowl and grimace that's on her face when we get on our knees and we pray and we start asking for stuff. Because the word says, seek ye first the king and then these things. But we seek the king, we seek the things and cancel the king. Be honest. Be honest. It's about the materials, isn't it? It's never been about the master. The only time you talk to God is simply because you have Gucci goals. You want worldly prosperity, but it's connected to no kingdom purpose. You want fancy drip connected to raggedy dreams. Designer labels with a damaged heart. And the reality is many of you will sit around the Christmas table and you'll eat an epic feast with empty souls. Because it's never been about him to begin with. That was me back then. I went to him and said, give me my inheritance up front. What can I say? That was a time in my life where I was thinking, I just want to be my own man. I want to go my own way. I want to be free. You know that definition of freedom where I can do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. That's a cultural definition of freedom, by the way. It's not a definition of freedom. It's freedom that disguises itself and it's really chaos. But that's what I thought that I wanted. And get this, I was so immature at the time that I said I wanted to be my own man. I wanted to go my own way. Hey, can you bless me up front? Oh, y'all didn't get it. I wanted to be my own man, stand on my own 2 feet, go my own way, do my own thing. Hey, but Dad, can you go ahead and fund my foolery? It sounds like many that are in our house, like, I want to be free. Can you pay for that? I mean, think about that. I couldn't even leave my father without my father. You need to think about it when you're trying to walk away from God. Do your own thing. Be your own man or woman. Live your own life. Do things your own way, right? Because nobody can tell you nothing. That in order to leave God, you need God to leave him. Like if he didn't give you your life, you would have no life to try to enjoy. If he didn't give you no time, you would have no time. If he didn't create free will, you wouldn't even have no choice. If he didn't give you provision, you would have no option. If he didn't give you health, you literally would not be able to walk away. Without his grace, you wouldn't be able to leave or come back. It's so amazing that we don't even realize leaving the Father requires the Father. But that was me. I was immature. And it's hard to say with such a great Father that I would even consider such a thing. But you know, when you're immature, you take for granted what you have right in front of your face. But you know what? After seeing the grimace on his face, after the sadness I can see piercing his heart, in his wisdom, he said, "Son, here you go." I said, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, all of a sudden, the blessing was mine. I had cash and assets. All the inheritance of my father that he had stored up for me was now mine. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was like, started from the bottom, now we're here. Look at y'all. I knew some of y'all from back in the day. I knew some of y'all looked familiar. But I didn't even realize that in his wisdom, he already knew that my biggest blessing would become my biggest lesson. But I said, okay. As I walked away, counting my money, it was a lot. Don't try to come get my money. I'm coming to get it right after this message is over. I'm coming back to get this money. So I'm telling you about my former days. I'm there right now, so don't even. But when he came to me and when he gave it to me, I knew it's time to go. It's been financed. I wanted to get as far away from him as possible because, you know, a lot of people know my father. So I wanted to make sure that where I'm going, there's no association between me and my dad. Because, you know, people know us, you know what I mean? So I had to get as far away as possible. Booked my first class ticket, headed to a distant country so that I could live it up. Because if I stayed close, you know, you can't be close to the Father and be raggedy at the same time. It's hard to do. So I had to go away because I didn't want any accountability. I wanted to make sure I could live my life my way without anybody having anything to say. You know how it is. Because many of you are sitting in the church, but your hearts are far from God. You left home a long time ago. And you don't want that accountability. People have no idea who your father is. You're so far off. And that's your preference. That was my preference. You got to understand, I went as far off could be. I was living that life, you know? Yeah, I was into drugs, into alcohol, into the clubs, finding love in all the wrong places. Day and night, I was making it rain. Don't touch my money, bro. That's the life that I was living. It was bad when I look back, but back then, I was just far from God. I was far from my Father. I was far from it all, living it up. And many of you are in this place right now where you're living it up and you don't even realize you're living it down. You're taking advantage of this time in your life and don't even realize you're wasting the time of your life. I was throwing it all away. I remember specifically one night I went out to eat with some friends. I went to go hang out like we always do. And by the way, you know what I mean? I was that dude, so I paid for every meal. It was on me, and I prided myself for it. And I remember us eating and drinking and merry and having a good old time. Relaxing, doing what we always do, hanging out, having a good time, out on the town. And then the meal was over. The waitress came and I was ready to pay for the check like I always do. That's a pretty lady. You kind of look like me. No big deal. We're just hanging out, having a good time until she came back. I started to get a little bit nervous. What's wrong? It declined? Oh, that's shit. I got multiple cards, bro. Don't even worry about it. Let me just try my other one. It's just the other one. Try this. So we was hanging out that night. I'll never forget it. And she came back after I gave her the second card. We good? Oh, you know the security thing? That like when they text your phone, they're trying to figure out who's swiping? Yeah, let me check my phone. Yeah, I remember that night because this was the hinge point in my story, because when I looked and checked my account, it was in double negative. Just this one time, bro. You handled it this one time? When somebody can handle it? I remember this night specifically because I remember my palms were so sweaty. My heart was racing because the favor was over. I was out. Everything that he gave me, and I believed the lie of the enemy. He's the father of lies. He will have you think that the favor of the Father lasts forever, even when you're not with the Father. And by the time you realize that it's over, you're too far gone. At this point, I'm in decline. I don't know what to do. I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I have nothing left. And if the truth be told, many of you right now, your life is in decline. You don't even realize you're at the hinge moment in your story where you got to make a decision between continuing to live a life of decline, or are you going to walk towards destiny? That's why it's happening. I mean, tell the truth. There's decline at home, decline in the family, decline in the marriage, decline in the finances, decline when I get an opportunity, decline when I look a job. I just keep getting declined. And I didn't have anything left. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. I was alone. There was nobody there to help me. And where I was, at the same time I was getting declined, there was nothing in the whole town. It was an economic collapse. I had nowhere to go. I went from my father's house to the penthouse to the outhouse. I could not pay my bills. I could not pay the rent. I got kicked out of my apartment. Your boy is living on the streets. At a time in my life where I was homeless and far from the Father, the blessing had run dry. Why? Not because it wasn't a blessing, but because I squandered it all. Living loose. Living the free life. And now I'm starving. I didn't know what else to do, so I needed a job. I needed somewhere to go. I had one friend that said if I ever needed anything, he would help me out. So I went and I knocked on his door, and I fell to my knees as he answered the door. And I said, I need help. I have nothing left. He said, I'm sorry, my friend, I have nothing for you. I went down to his feet and I said, please, please, help me. I'm out, I'm done, I have nothing left. And you know what he told me? He said, well, you know, I'm a farmer. I've got some pigs out in the back, you can go feed them. Pigs? I don't even eat pigs. I'm not like y'all. Y'all be eating ham, pig feet, hog maw, bacon, chitlins. Y'all just be. I'm not with that. But I was so low at this time in my life, I had no choice. I was far from the Father. I was spent. Is there anybody in the house that's spent? You're done? You're tired? That's where I was. So I went back there. I had no choice. And I was surrounded by swine. I was surrounded by pigs. And now when I look back, I realize that God was letting me see that I was surrounded by the very lifestyle I chose. Unclean. And many of you, you know the lifestyle you're living. Just look at your surroundings. It's full of pigs. Everything's unclean. Every noun in your life, person, place, or thing. It's just like the swine I was feeding. It's a picture of your life. It's letting you know you're far from God. And I wasn't just around it. I was feeding it. I was feeding the pigs just like many of you are feeding into the culture. You're not just around it, you're feeding into the gossip. You're feeding into all the foolery. You are a part of it. You're embedded in it. You're in it. And the Lord is showing you this morning, that's because that's the life you chose. But the worst part, I hate talking about this part. I was starving. I was hungry. So I started envying the pigs as they ate. So I headed over to the trough and I would gladly eat their food with them. It was so bad that when someone grabbed my arm and tried to pull me back, I would rip my arm away from him and go right back to the trough and gladly eat the pig's food. Oh, that doesn't sound familiar. Many of you are not just with the pigs. You're not just feeding into it. You're gladly digesting what they eat. You're eating the same music. You're on the same social media platform, taking in the same junk. And you're doing it gladly. Then if anybody comes to you and says, say, no, that's not where you're supposed to be, you rip your arm and you go right back to the trough. Because that's the life you're gladly living. You're that far away from home, just like I was. I would gladly eat the pig's food. I was at the lowest point of my life. Where are you at in yours? Are you far from the Father? Are you surrounded by unclean? I was thinking about the excuses I used to make to stay unclean. When I used to smoke, I would say silly stuff like, well, it's all right, it's from the earth. Poison ivy's from the earth too, smoke that. I was just that low. And I said to myself, I started to think about my father. And I said, how many of the people in my father's house have provision? They have a home, they have covering, they have pay, they have protection. And here I am, my father's son, and I'm out here dying. I want to go home. There's no place like home. But I was too far. I just felt like there's no way. Like, there's no way he's going to accept me as far gone as I am. There's no way he's going to forgive me after I've squandered every blessing that he gave me. But I said, I ain't got nothing left. I need to try. And there's many of you this morning, you're at this point in the story where I'm at right now, where you're saying, I'm too far gone. I've been living out in the world. There's no way he's going to forgive me. There's no way he's going to take me back. There's no way I can go home. That's how I felt. But I decided, I'm going home. I got up. And I started to head that way. And as far as I had gone with no money left, it felt like it was taking forever. I was still nowhere close. I was a long ways off. And I just started seeing that the geography started to look a little bit familiar. But I still was nowhere close. And I looked out in the distance and I saw someone coming towards me. I was far off, but someone was coming at me, and then they started running at me and making haste towards me. I couldn't make out who it was, but I just saw him sprinting towards me. And I'm trying to figure out who this is. And as he got close, I said, is this my father? Is this my father? He embraced me. He hugged me. He ran to me. He kissed me. And he did it while I was still far off. He didn't wait for me to get all the way home. Listen, he met me where I was. I don't know if you know it or not, but Christ demonstrated his love towards you. That while you were still far off, while you were yet a sinner, while you were still not home, while you were far away, he came running towards you. Do you understand what this means? For my father to keep running towards me, that means he was already looking. That means his head was out of the window. That means he already had hope. That means he was already anticipating. That means he was already interceding because the Father was waiting on his Son. He's nothing like me. The problem is you think God is like you. You wouldn't forgive them, so you think God won't forgive you. He's nothing like you. I left, he came. I rebelled, he forgave. He's nothing like me. I abandoned and he welcomed. I was bitter, he had joy. I had low self-esteem, he met me with high value. Who is this man? For me, it was my Father. For you, it's Jesus the Christ, the Son of the living God. I said, here he is. He came all this way. I need to repent. I need to ask for forgiveness. I went to him and I fell to my knees and I said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm not worthy to be your son. What is he doing? It's already enough that he ran to me. Now he's giving me gifts. How could it be Christmas for me when I've been out in the culture? How can my Father come to me with gifts? I should be bringing him gifts. All I brought him was a sinner. And he hugs me and starts presenting me with gifts. The first gift he gave me was a robe. In our culture, do you know what that means? It means he's giving me a gift of honor. Even though I've been a dishonorable son, he meets me with honor and gives me a gift. He clothed me in righteousness. He gave me the fine linen of the saints, the garments of salvation. Don't you understand that when you come to Christ, he clothes you in the fine linen of the saints? You're seated with him in a place of honor in heavenly places. How could that be possible? You're a sinner. Your Father is just that good. That wasn't all he gave me. Then he presented me with a ring. I couldn't believe it. This is a signet ring. The robe means honor. The ring means authority. How could he give me a shared authority when I've lived a life of anarchy? And many of you are in the same place, and he's saying, I will meet you today, not just with forgiveness, but I'll present you with many gifts, with honor and authority. I was undeserving. How could it be Christmas for me when I lived in the culture? A sandal. The robe is honor. The ring is authority. The sandal is freedom. This is a symbol he gave me that now that you're home, you will forever walk in freedom. You are no longer a slave to the old life. You're home now. Do you not know the scriptures? Who the Son sets free is free indeed. Somebody today ought to come get their freedom. You're no longer a slave to sin when you come to Christ. He gives you honor and seats you with him. He gives you authority in spite of your anarchy. Then he says, put this on and walk in the freedom you have in your new salvation. Father, what's this? Not only did he give me the gifts, I was just trying to come back and just be a servant. Just put me in a room over here. He gave me honor. He gave me authority. He said, you will forever walk in freedom. It was almost as if he was saying, I will remember your sins no more. And then he snapped to his servants one more time. In our culture, they would say it like this: kill the fatted calf, cook up the steaks, because it's time to have a party. Don't you know that when you come home, when you meet Jesus Christ, not only does he give you honor, not only does he give you authority, not only does he say walk in freedom, but all of the heavenly hosts, they celebrate. All of the heavenly hosts, they have a party. All of the heavenly hosts, they celebrate your coming. Because in his word, he will celebrate one lost coin, one lost sheep, or one lost son or daughter. And he said, kill the fatted calf. Because that day for me and today for you, it's time to celebrate. Thank you, Lord, for having me share my story. And my story can be your story. But you have to do one thing. One thing. 2 words. Go home.